The neighborhood looked calm, clean, and almost too perfect when Mark drove in with his bright silver Dodge Charger. It was early Saturday morning, and the sun made the car shine like a mirror. People walking their dogs turned their heads. Some kids stopped playing and pointed at the loud engine rumble. But the person who stared the hardest was a woman standing on her porch with her hands on her hips, Karen. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She was the president of the HOA, and she took her job more seriously than a soldier in a war movie. If a flower pot was 2 inches to the left, she wrote a warning. If a mailbox had a tiny scratch, she sent photos to the HOA group. And now, she had found something new to target: Mark's Dodge Charger. Mark had just moved in. He was excited, happy, and ready for a peaceful life. He had worked many years to buy his dream car, and he took great care of it. He parked it in his own driveway, stepped out, stretched his arms, and looked around thinking, "This is a nice place. I hope it stays peaceful." But the peace didn't last long. Because Karen had already started walking toward him. She walked fast, like she wanted to reach him before he had time to escape. Her heels clicked loudly on the pavement. Her face was tight, serious, and full of judgment, as if the car had personally insulted her. "Excuse me," she shouted before she was even close enough. Mark turned, surprised. "Good morning. Can I help you?" She didn't smile. She didn't say welcome to the neighborhood. She pointed at the Charger like it was a dangerous animal. "That car," she said, "is not approved." Mark blinked. "Not approved, for what?" "For this community," she replied. "We do not allow cars like this." Mark looked at his own car, confused. It was clean. It was quiet now. It wasn't blocking anything. And this was his driveway. "I checked the HOA rules before buying this house," he said politely. "There's nothing about car types." Karen lifted her chin like she was offended. "I am the president. I know the rules." Mark stayed calm. "Okay, can you show me the rule?" She paused just for a moment, but long enough for Mark to guess she didn't actually have one. Then she pointed again at the Charger. "This car is too loud, too big, and too flashy," she said. "It attracts trouble. We prefer simple cars. This is a family neighborhood." Mark almost laughed but stopped himself. "Ma'am, it's just a car." Karen's eyes narrowed. "It won't be just a car when the HOA deals with it." And with that, she turned around and marched away like she had won a battle. Mark stood there for a moment thinking, what on earth was that? He shook his head, unpacked his things, and tried to forget the strange welcome. But Karen didn't forget. Later that day, Mark noticed her again. He was washing the Charger, enjoying the sunny weather, when he saw her standing across the street holding a small notebook. She wasn't even hiding it. She was openly taking notes and staring at the car. Mark waved politely. She didn't wave back. An hour later, as Mark carried boxes into the house, he heard the sound of a phone camera clicking repeatedly. He stepped outside and found Karen standing only a few feet from the Charger, taking photos from every angle like she was a detective investigating a crime scene. "Is there a problem?" Mark asked. "Just documenting," she replied without looking at him. "For what?" "For the community records." Mark frowned. "It's my car. It's parked in my driveway." She gave him a tight smile. "Not everything you think is yours, is actually yours." Mark stood frozen. What did that even mean? Before he could ask, she walked away again, acting like she had done nothing wrong. That evening, Mark talked to a neighbor named Tom, a friendly guy who had lived there for years. Tom laughed softly when Mark told him about the strange interaction. "Oh man," Tom said, "you met Karen already? She always finds something to complain about. Last month she argued with me because my grass was too green." Mark laughed. "Too green?" "Yeah," Tom said. "She said it made the other lawns look bad." They both laughed, but inside, Mark felt uneasy. If she made trouble about grass, what would she do about a sporty car? Tom leaned closer and lowered his voice. Just be careful. She thinks she owns this place. Mark shrugged. She can think whatever she wants. I know the rules. Tom nodded. I hope that's enough. The next morning, the real trouble started. Mark stepped outside with a cup of coffee and froze. There was something bright and ugly stuck to the windshield of his Charger. A yellow paper. Bold letters. Big red stamp. HOA violation notice. Mark felt his stomach drop. He pulled the notice off and read it. The message didn't even make sense. Vehicle is unapproved. Report for inspection within 24 hours. Failure to comply may result in fines or removal. HOA President, Karen D. Mark looked around the neighborhood. Karen was standing across the street again, watching him. Watching his reaction. Waiting for something. He walked toward her. What is this about? She crossed her arms proudly. A proper warning. Your car must be inspected. We need to decide if it meets community standards. Your community standards aren't in the rulebook, Mark replied. Karen smiled like she was enjoying the argument. I make updates when needed. Mark took a deep breath. Look. I'm not trying to cause problems. But this car is legal, clean, and on my property. Property is shared, she said. Nothing here belongs only to you. We all have a say. Mark stared at her in disbelief. You're saying my car belongs to the community? Everything in this neighborhood is for the benefit of everyone, she answered dramatically. Mark walked back to his car slowly, thinking, this woman is not normal. He had no idea how far she would go. He had no idea how much trouble she was about to cause. And he definitely didn't know this small fight would one day bring the state attorney to his front door. But for now, the story had only just begun. The yellow violation notice from yesterday was still on Mark's kitchen table, and every time he looked at it, he felt confused, annoyed, and honestly, a little curious. Why was Karen acting like the Charger was a problem? Why was she so obsessed? He tried to shake the thoughts away. He wanted to enjoy his new home. So that morning, Mark decided to take the Charger out for a drive, get groceries, and clear his head. When he stepped outside, he stopped instantly. Another notice was stuck to the car. This time it was pink. And bigger. Mark walked slowly toward it, half expecting Karen to jump out from behind a bush. The paper flapped in the wind like it was trying to get his attention faster. Second warning, immediate action required. Failure to comply will result in daily fines. Mark rubbed his forehead. Daily fines? For what? He looked around. The street was quiet but not empty. Curtains moved in several windows. People were watching. This neighborhood liked drama, clearly. Then he heard a familiar sound. Click, click, click. He didn't even need to turn around. He already knew who it was. Karen was taking pictures again. She was standing on her driveway, holding her phone high like a reporter trying to catch breaking news. Mark raised the pink notice in the air. Why is there a second warning when the first one doesn't even make sense? Karen lowered her phone slowly and walked over as if she were entering a stage. Her voice came out smooth but cold. Because you did not report your vehicle for inspection. You were supposed to do that within 24 hours. Mark sighed. There is no such rule. I checked. Karen's eyes narrowed. You checked the old rules. Old rules? Mark repeated. There's an update now? There will be, she said proudly. I'm writing one. Mark stared at her. You're writing new rules because of my car? The way she smiled made the hair on Mark's neck stand up. That smile did not belong on a reasonable person. It's for the safety of the community, she said. It's a car, Mark replied. Not a wild animal. Karen didn't blink. You don't understand how communities work. We maintain order by keeping standards high. Mark could feel this conversation going nowhere good. Look. I don't want problems. But I'm not letting anyone inspect my car. It's private property. Everything in this neighborhood is community property, she said calmly. Mark actually laughed. Lady, that's not how ownership works. Karen stepped closer. Don't laugh at me. I know what I'm doing. I've been HOA president for 8 years. That explains a lot, Mark muttered. Karen gasped like he had insulted the queen. Disrespect will only make things worse. And before Mark could respond, she turned around and walked away again like she always did, ending the conversation with her dramatic exit. Mark took the pink notice inside and dropped it on the table next to the yellow one. The papers almost looked like trophies from a competition he didn't sign up for. He opened his laptop and searched the official HOA website. There were no new rules. No updates. No mention of vehicle inspections. Karen was completely making things up. And if she was bold enough to create fake warnings, what else was she willing to do? A little later, Mark stepped outside to check his mail. He hoped the day would stay peaceful. But peace didn't stay long in this neighborhood. A black SUV rolled into the street. It slowed down in front of Mark's house. Inside were 2 people, both wearing polo shirts with the HOA logo. The SUV stopped. The window rolled down. Good morning, said the man inside. We're from the HOA Vehicle Compliance Department. Mark blinked. Vehicle what? The woman next to him held a clipboard. We're here to inspect the Dodge Charger. Mark crossed his arms. There is no Vehicle Compliance Department. The man tried to smile professionally. There is now. No, Mark said firmly, there isn't. I already checked the HOA rules. The woman tapped the clipboard. Karen sent us. Mark wasn't surprised. I don't care. You're not inspecting anything. The man's voice dropped. Sir, if you refuse, the HOA has the right to fine you. No, it doesn't, Mark said. Show me the rule. The man and woman exchanged a glance. Then the woman flipped through her clipboard like she was trying to find something that didn't exist. The rule is being updated, she finally said. Mark laughed. Yeah, she told me the same thing. The man sighed and looked embarrassed. Look, we're just doing what she told us. She's the president. Being president doesn't give her magic powers, Mark said. Now leave my property. The man hesitated. We'll report back to her. Mark shrugged. Go ahead. They drove off slowly, looking confused and uncomfortable, like they knew Karen was wrong but were too scared to argue with her. That evening, Mark sat on his porch. He watched the sunset. He tried to relax. But his peace was broken again. Karen walked out of her house and stood at the edge of her lawn. She didn't come closer. She didn't speak. She just stared at the Charger like it was an enemy. Mark met her eyes. Can we stop this? This is getting ridiculous. Karen answered without blinking. This isn't ridiculous. This is the beginning. The beginning of what? Mark asked. The beginning of restoring order, she said slowly, like she believed she was in some movie where she was the hero. Mark shook his head. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Her voice dropped low. You will follow community rules, or the community will take action. Mark felt a chill run down his spine. Not because of the words. But because of the way she said them, calm, sure, confident. As if she truly believed she had the power to take his car away. As if she had done it before. Mark watched her walk back inside. He looked at his Charger. And he thought to himself. This woman isn't just strict. She's dangerous. And he had no idea what was coming next. Because tomorrow, Karen was going to cross a line she could never step back from. For 2 days, Mark tried to ignore the warnings and the strange behavior. He hoped things would calm down. He hoped Karen would get bored and move on to someone else's life. But Karen was not the kind of person who got bored. She was the kind of person who escalated. On the third morning, Mark stepped out to get some fresh air. The sun was just rising, and the street was quiet. But something felt different, like the air was heavier, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. Then he saw it. Karen was standing in his driveway. Not near it. Not beside it. She was in the driveway, right next to the Dodge Charger. And she wasn't taking pictures this time. She was touching the door handle. Mark rushed forward. "Hey! What do you think you're doing?" Karen didn't even jump or act surprised. She pulled her hand back slowly, turned, and looked at him with a strange calmness. "I'm doing an inspection," she said. "On my car?" Mark shouted. "On my property?" Karen nodded, like she was explaining something simple. "Yes. I needed to verify the interior conditions." Mark almost laughed from shock. "Interior conditions? Are you insane? You tried to open my car." Karen crossed her arms. "I have authority. The HOA allows spot checks on suspicious vehicles." Mark pointed at the ground. "This is trespassing." Karen shook her head. "This is community space." Mark stared at her. "This is my driveway. It's on my deed." Karen's voice softened, but not in a kind way. More like she was talking to a child. "You don't understand, Mark. People like you come into peaceful communities with loud cars and make everything messy. I'm simply protecting everyone." Mark stepped closer. "Protecting them from what? A clean car sitting quietly in my driveway?" Karen's jaw tightened. "You think this is just about a car?" "No. This is about respect. You ignored my warnings. You ignored my notices. That shows you don't respect the HOA." Mark took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I respect rules, real rules. Not the ones you make up daily." Karen's face hardened. "Don't question my authority." "Oh, believe me," Mark said, "I'm questioning everything." Karen took a small step toward him. Her voice dropped low and sharp. "You're creating a hostile environment." Mark blinked. "I'm hostile? You're the one breaking into my car." Karen didn't react to his anger. Instead, she smiled. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was the kind of smile people give when they think they've already won. "You'll understand soon," she said softly. "I have support." "From who?" Mark asked. But she didn't answer. She just walked away with slow, confident steps, like she was walking off a movie set again, leaving chaos behind. Later that afternoon, things got even stranger. Mark heard loud knocking on his door. Not polite knocking. Hard, urgent knocking. He opened the door to find 2 HOA board members, different from the ones in the SUV. One was a tall man in his 60s with a serious face. The other was a short woman holding a folder stuffed with papers. "Hello, Mark," the tall man said. "We're here to resolve an escalating situation." Mark crossed his arms. "If this is about the car again, I'm not doing this." The woman held up the folder. "We are here to collect information about the vehicle." Mark raised his eyebrows. "Collect information? For what?" "For potential community use," she replied. Mark froze. "Community use? What does that mean?" The tall man stepped forward. "The HOA believes your vehicle may be beneficial to the neighborhood. It can be used for events, volunteer tasks, and community transport." Mark stared at them like they had just told him the sky was green. "You want my private car, for community transport?" "It's only fair," the man said. "Everyone contributes." Mark shook his head slowly. "No. Absolutely not. You can't just take my car. The woman opened her folder. Karen informed us that you refused inspection. That means the HOA has rights to intervene. Mark's voice rose. Karen made that up. You're all believing a woman who tried to break into my car. The tall man sighed. Karen is our president. We trust her. Mark held the door wide open. Well, I don't. And unless you have a police officer with a real warrant, you're not getting anywhere near my vehicle. The two board members exchanged awkward glances. They didn't look confident. They didn't even look sure of themselves. They just mumbled something about further action and walked away. As they left, Mark noticed Karen watching from her porch again, smiling like she was already planning her next move. Night came. Mark couldn't sleep. He kept checking the window, afraid someone might mess with the charger again. Around midnight, the motion sensor light in his driveway turned on. Mark jumped up and ran to the window. What he saw made his blood boil. Karen. Again. But this time she wasn't alone. She had brought 2 flashlights and another HOA member, someone Mark hadn't seen before. They were walking around the charger, shining lights under it like mechanics. What the hell is this? Mark shouted out the window. Karen didn't look up. She clicked her tongue like he was the one causing trouble. It's a night assessment, she said casually. We had reports that your car makes strange noises. It's parked. Mark yelled. It's not even running. Karen pointed her flashlight at him. Stop interfering with official HOA duty. Mark ran out the front door. Back away from my car right now or I'm calling the police. Karen finally straightened up. Her face twisted with annoyance. You always threaten, she said. Never cooperate. Mark stepped between her and the car. Get off my property. Karen stared at him, her face cold. Then she spoke quietly, almost whispering. You think the car is yours. But soon, it won't be. Mark's stomach dropped. Karen took 2 steps back and smiled again, that creepy, confident smile, before walking away into the night with her helper. Mark looked at his charger. Then at the street. Then back at his house. For the first time since moving in, he didn't feel safe. What he didn't know was that tomorrow, Karen would take things so far, someone else important would get involved. And this time, it wouldn't just be neighbors or board members. It would be the police. And soon after, the state attorney. Mark woke up early the next morning with only one thought in his mind. Enough is enough. He had tried being polite. He had tried ignoring the problem. He had tried talking to the board members. None of it worked. Karen kept crossing lines, and last night's midnight inspection was the final straw. Mark sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened his laptop. He wasn't going to wait for Karen to ruin something else. He was going to get ahead of her. First, he typed an email to the official HOA management company, the one that actually ran the paperwork, the payments, and the legal side of things. The group Karen supposedly took instructions from. He wrote everything. The fake warnings. The made-up rules. The weird vehicle compliance department. Karen trying to open his car door. The night inspection. The harassment. He attached pictures and screenshots but hesitated before clicking send. This wasn't a small complaint. This was serious. After a moment, he exhaled and hit send. He didn't expect a fast reply. But he got one. 40 minutes later, a message popped up. It said, "Thank you for reaching out. None of the actions you described were approved or authorized by the HOA management. We will investigate immediately. Please do not comply with any demands until we contact you again." Mark stared at the email. None of the actions were approved? That meant no RAL warning notices. No inspection requirements. No vehicle department. No rule updates. Everything Karen had done, she did on her own. She had been using the HOA name like a personal weapon. And now the management knew. For the first time since moving in, Mark felt a little hopeful. That afternoon, Mark decided to gather more evidence just in case the situation got worse. He walked around the charger with his phone camera recording everything. He even checked the door handle Karen had tried to open. Scratches. Small, but visible. He took close-up pictures. While he was inspecting, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. It was Tom, his friendly neighbor. "Hey man," Tom said quietly. "I wanted to warn you. Karen's going around telling people you're bringing danger to the community." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Danger? How?" "She's saying your car attracts criminals, or racers, or something stupid," Tom replied. "Some people are believing her." Mark let out a short laugh. "Of course they are." Tom looked around to make sure no one was listening. "A few neighbors have security cameras. I asked one of them to check footage from last night." Mark leaned forward. "And?" Tom pulled out his phone and showed a short clip. There, in full HD, was Karen and her assistant walking around the charger with flashlights, touching it, bending down to inspect underneath, even whispering to each other. Mark's eyes widened. "This is perfect." Tom nodded. "If she tries to lie, this video shuts her down." Mark felt strength returning. "Thanks, Tom." "Seriously." "No problem," Tom said. "Just be careful. She's not acting normal lately." Later in the evening, Karen made her move again. Mark was sitting on the porch when he saw her marching toward his house with a clipboard and an irritated expression, like someone had told her bad news and she was ready to take it out on the world. "Mark," she snapped. "I need to speak with you about your behavior." Mark stayed seated. "I'm busy." Karen didn't like that answer. She stepped closer. "I've received reports that you've been filming board members and interfering with community operations." Mark smirked. "You mean last night when you tried to break into my car?" Karen's face twitched. "That was an inspection." "No," Mark said calmly. "It was trespassing." Karen took a deep breath through her nose. "You are making this situation worse." "I'm trying to help you." "By taking my car?" Mark asked. "It's for community benefit," she said, repeating the same ridiculous phrase from earlier. Mark stood up slowly. "Karen, stop. Just stop. The HOA management knows what you're doing." For the first time, Mark saw something he hadn't seen in Karen before. Fear. It flashed in her eyes for a second, quick, but real. Then she forced a smile. "Oh, they know? Did you tell them your one-sided story?" "It wasn't one-sided," Mark replied. "I sent them everything. Pictures. Emails. And video." Karen's smile dropped. "Video?" Mark nodded. "Multiple angles. From neighbors' security cameras." She stepped back. Just half an inch. But enough to show she was shaken. Then her expression changed again, anger returning, stronger this time. "You think you can go around me?" she asked. "You think they'll believe you over the HOA president?" Mark shrugged. "They already did." Karen's face turned red. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard. For a moment, she looked like she was going to throw it at him. Instead, she hissed, "You're making a mistake." "No," Mark said, "you made a mistake by abusing your position." Karen pointed her pen at his chest. "This isn't over." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're right. It's not over. But this time, I get to fight back." Karen stared at him for a long moment, like she was trying to find control again. When she didn't find any, she turned and stormed off, walking fast, almost shaking with anger. Mark watched her go. He knew she wasn't finished. He knew she'd try something desperate. But he wasn't afraid anymore. Not now. That night, Mark got another email from HOA management. We have reviewed your evidence. We will be sending a representative to the community tomorrow. Please stay calm and avoid confrontation. A representative? Mark had no idea what that meant. But the next morning, when he heard sirens, when he saw a police car slowly driving toward his house, he realized the situation had grown way bigger than he expected. Karen was about to face consequences she had never imagined. Because this time, the police weren't coming for Mark. They were coming for her. When the police car rolled slowly into the neighborhood the next morning, Mark felt his heart pound. Not from fear, but from curiosity. Who called them? Why were they here? And why were they stopping directly in front of Karen's house, not his? Karen stepped outside as if she had been expecting them. Her face was already set into her usual fake innocence. She walked toward the officers with her clipboard in hand, ready to twist the story in her favor. Mark watched from his porch. The officer approached Karen calmly. Ma'am, we're here because of multiple reports from residents about harassment and suspicious activity. Karen gasped dramatically. Suspicious activity? Oh, you must be talking about him. She pointed at Mark like she was pointing at a criminal. He's refusing community rules and threatening me. The officer frowned. We have video evidence of you attempting to open his car and entering private property. Karen's smile cracked for just 1 second. Video? What video? She asked. Mark stepped off his porch and walked over. My neighbors recorded you. Want me to show the police now? Karen's face turned pale. She shook her head quickly. No need. This is all blown out of proportion. I was simply doing an HOA check. The officer's voice sharpened. You cannot enter private property without permission. That's trespassing. Karen opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again like her brain was buffering. I was protecting the community, she said weakly. Ma'am, the officer said, if you continue this behavior, we will file a report. Karen didn't speak. She just stood there frozen, as if she had been hit by a wave she never saw coming. But as the officer walked away, something in her eyes changed. The fear disappeared. And something darker replaced it. A kind of quiet rage. 2 hours later, things went from bad to dangerous. Mark was in his living room when he heard the sound of metal scraping against metal, sharp, ugly, unmistakable. He ran outside and his stomach dropped. There were fresh scratches on the side of his Dodge Charger. Not tiny scratches. Not accidental scratches. Long, deep, intentional ones running from the front fender to the rear door. Mark felt the air leave his lungs. He looked around desperately. Then he saw something shocking. Across the street, Karen was standing on her porch holding a metal keychain. She wasn't trying to hide it. She wasn't pretending to be innocent. She was staring directly at Mark, waiting for him to react. Mark walked toward her, his jaw clenched. You did this? Karen tilted her head. I don't know what you're talking about. Mark pointed at the scratches. My car didn't do that to itself. Karen shrugged. Maybe your muscle car isn't as tough as you think. Mark felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to breathe. He wasn't going to give her the reaction she wanted. You know there are cameras everywhere, right? Mark said. For the first time, Karen blinked. She forgot about the cameras. Oh, those, she said, forcing a laugh. People delete footage all the time. Mark shook his head. Not this time. He pulled out his phone and texted Tom. Check your camera. Something happened again. Within minutes, Tom came running over with his phone. I got it, he said. Clear footage. He pressed play. There was Karen in the video, walking around the Charger, looking around the street, before dragging her key across the paint. She looked guilty in the recording but proud in real life. Mark held up the phone toward her. "Explain this." Karen didn't look at the video. She didn't need to. She already knew what she did. She simply said, "I don't care what that shows. I'll say it's fake." Tom scoffed. "Karen, deepfake technology can't magically appear in a neighbor's security cam. This isn't edited." Karen didn't respond. Instead, she turned and rushed inside her house, slamming the door like a child who had been caught stealing candy. Mark knew what was next. He called the police again. When the officer arrived and watched the footage, his expression turned serious. "This is vandalism," he said. "Clear as day." "Press charges," Mark said firmly. The officer nodded. "We'll file a report. The HOA has no authority over private vehicles. This is a personal crime." Karen watched from her window, her eyes wide and wild, like a cornered animal. She didn't come outside this time. Not a word. Not a complaint. Nothing. She just watched. The officer knocked on her door. When she opened it, her voice was shaking. Is something wrong, officer?" "You scratched Mr. Mark's car," he said. "We saw the video." "Don't lie." Karen swallowed hard. "It wasn't me. That footage is manipulated." The officer didn't argue. He simply handed her a paper. "This is a notice. You are now part of an active vandalism investigation." Karen stared at the paper like it was poison. "This isn't fair," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm the HOA president." The officer cut her off. "That position gives you no legal power over personal property." Karen's shoulders slumped. She looked like someone who had lost a battle she thought she had already won. But Mark knew Karen. She wasn't giving up. Not yet. Later that evening, as the sun was setting, another unexpected visitor arrived. A black sedan rolled into the neighborhood. Not police. Not HOA. Someone more serious. A man in a gray suit stepped out of the car and walked toward Mark. "Mr. Mark?" the man asked. "Yes?" "I'm from the state attorney's office." Mark blinked. "State attorney?" "Yes. We were contacted by the HOA management company. They forwarded your email and the evidence. We're here because what's happening in this neighborhood might be more than simple harassment." Mark glanced at Karen's house. The curtain moved. She was listening. The man continued, "We believe Karen may have violated multiple state laws. And depending on what we uncover, this could turn into a larger legal case." Karen's curtain closed fast, like she had just heard the worst news of her life. Things weren't just bad anymore. They were out of control. And Karen was about to face something she never expected. Real consequences. The next morning, the neighborhood woke up different. Quieter. Stranger. Like the air itself knew something big was coming. Mark stepped outside to get some fresh air, but instead of peace, he felt a strange tension, like the whole street was holding its breath. At the end of the block, the same black sedan from yesterday pulled up again. The man in the gray suit, Mr. Lewis, stepped out and walked toward Mark with calm confidence. "Morning, Mr. Mark," he said. "Morning. You're back early." Mr. Lewis nodded. "Yes. We reviewed the videos you provided. And your other neighbors also sent additional recordings." He paused. "There's a pattern of harassment. A long one." Mark wasn't surprised. Karen had been at this for months before the charger even arrived. "What happens now?" Mark asked. "We speak to her," Mr. Lewis said simply. But not the friendly way. Across the street, a window curtain twitched. Karen was watching again, her eyes probably wide with panic. She had spent the entire night pacing her living room. Mark could hear her footsteps through the quiet street after midnight. Mr. Lewis noticed her watching. So did Mark. And then Mr. Lewis said something that made the moment feel heavy. People like Karen think HOA rules are above the law. Today she learns they aren't. He walked straight toward her house. Karen must have seen him coming because her door flew open before he even reached the porch. Her face looked tired, stressed, but still stubborn, like someone who had spent all night convincing herself she was right. "Yes," she said sharply. "Why are you here again?" "I told the police I did nothing wrong." Mr. Lewis didn't flinch. "I'm with the state attorney's office. We need to talk." Karen blinked. "State attorney?" "Yes," he said. "You're under review for possible criminal behavior. Harassment, property damage, misuse of HOA authority, and false reports." Karen laughed nervously. "That's crazy. This is all a misunderstanding." "It isn't," Mr. Lewis said. His voice was calm but cold. "Multiple neighbors provided evidence. Not just Mark. You've been abusing your position for months." Karen crossed her arms. "I'm the HOA president. I make the rules." "HOA rules do not give you legal power," Mr. Lewis replied. "They do not allow you to enter private property. They do not allow you to touch anyone's vehicle. They do not allow you to lie to police." Karen's face twitched. "That video is fake," she snapped again, her voice cracking. Mr. Lewis pulled a binder from his bag. It was thick, filled with printed screenshots, complaint records, emails, and photographs. "This," he said, "is your behavior." Karen stepped back. "No, that's not real." Mr. Lewis ignored her panic and continued. "You're also being investigated for threatening residents, sending illegal fines, and trying to enforce rules that do not exist." Karen looked around like she expected someone to come defend her. No one did. Every neighbor stayed inside. Every window stayed closed. She was finally alone. "Why are you targeting me?" she asked in a small voice. "We're not targeting you," Mr. Lewis said. "We're holding you accountable." Mark watched from across the street. He wasn't enjoying it. He didn't want revenge. He just wanted peace. He wanted his car safe. He wanted his home safe. But Karen didn't see it that way. She suddenly pointed at Mark and shouted, "He's lying. He turned the whole neighborhood against me. He wants me gone." Mr. Lewis frowned. "Ma'am, the evidence doesn't lie." Karen shook her head violently. No, this is wrong. He is the troublemaker, not me." Mark stayed calm. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. But Karen wasn't done. She stormed across her yard toward him, finger raised, anger exploding. "You planned this," she yelled. "You brought that car here to challenge me. You want to ruin the community." Mr. Lewis stepped between them. "Back away, ma'am. Now." Karen froze. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her eyes were wild. Then she whispered something Mark will never forget. "If I can't control this community, no one will." Mr. Lewis turned to her sharply. "Is that a threat?" Karen didn't answer. But her silence was more dangerous than words. The situation turned even more serious when two more cars arrived. Not police. Not HOA. Investigators. Real ones. They walked up to Mr. Lewis and quietly exchanged documents. Karen looked like the ground under her feet had opened. "What is this?" she whispered. "Why are there investigators? This is only an HOA thing, right?" Mr. Lewis shook his head. "No. This is bigger. Your actions may involve fraud and intimidation. HOA matters become state matters when laws are broken." Karen sank into her porch chair like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said softly. "I was just trying to keep the community safe." Mark felt a strange sympathy for her for just 1 second, but it disappeared quickly. Too much damage had been done.
Mr. Lewis spoke gently now. You let control become an obsession. It hurt people. Karen looked up at him with trembling eyes. So, what happens to me?
That depends, he said.
But the investigation is officially open. And you can't interfere with anyone in this neighborhood during the process. Karen swallowed hard. Interfere? Mr. Lewis nodded. That means no emails. No notices. No complaints. No rules. You're suspended from the HOA effective immediately. Karen's mouth fell open. You can't do that, she shouted.
I just did, he said. When the investigators left, the street was quiet again. But it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one felt heavier. Darker. Like the story wasn't over, only shifting into a new phase.
Karen slowly walked back inside her house.
For the first time since the charger arrived, she looked scared. Really scared.
Mark exhaled and finally relaxed a little. But deep down, he knew something wasn't finished. People like Karen didn't give up easily.
Especially when they felt cornered.
And the storm that was coming next? It would be bigger than anything yet. The next morning, the neighborhood felt different. Quiet. Tense. Like everyone was waiting for the final act.
Mark sat on his porch with a cup of coffee, staring at his Dodge Charger. Every scratch, every mark, every notice, it was all behind him now. The car had survived Karen's obsession. But the memory of her threats and late-night inspections still made his skin crawl. Across the street, Karen's house was silent.
No windows opened. No curtain twitched. Not even a single step could be heard.
It was almost as if she had disappeared.
Almost. But Mark knew better. Karen wasn't gone.
She was plotting her next move. By mid-morning, there was a knock on Mark's door. He opened it to find Mr. Lewis, the state attorney's representative, standing with 2 other investigators. Their faces were serious, professional, and focused. Mr. Mark, Mr. Lewis said calmly, we are here to ensure your safety and finalize the investigation regarding Karen D. This is your chance to tell us everything you've experienced, directly and in detail.
Mark nodded and invited them in.
As he spoke, he recounted everything: Karen's fake warnings, the night inspections, the attempts to touch his car, the scratches, the false claims, and the threats.
He even showed the video evidence from his neighbor's cameras.
The investigators took notes carefully. Mr. Lewis nodded from time to time, his expression stern. This, he said finally, is more than a simple HOA dispute. She abused her position, trespassed, and vandalized property. Legal action will follow. Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him. The law was finally on his side. But relief was short-lived. Across the street, Karen emerged from her house. Her face was pale, her hair messy, and her usual confident smile nowhere in sight. She clutched her clipboard like a shield. You can't do this, she shouted, her voice shaking.
I am the president. I have rights. Mr. Lewis stepped forward, calm but firm.
Your rights do not include breaking the law, Karen.
You will face consequences for your actions. Karen's eyes darted around.
She saw neighbors watching, cameras rolling, and even Tom standing quietly by Mark's side.
Panic began to replace the fury that usually drove her. Mark stayed calm. Karen, it's over. The law isn't on your side anymore. Karen's lips trembled.
She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it.
She knew Mark was right.
For the first time, she had no argument, no power, and no backup.
Then, almost like a storm breaking, Karen made one last desperate move.
She ran toward the Charger, as if grabbing it would restore her control. Mark reacted instantly, moving between her and the car.
Stop, he shouted.
Mr. Lewis and the investigators immediately stepped in, blocking her path.
Karen froze, her chest heaving.
"It's mine," she screamed.
"I made the rules."
"Not anymore," Mr. Lewis said firmly.
"You are suspended from all HOA duties. Any further attempts to harass Mr. Mark or his property will be criminal." Karen's knees buckled slightly. She dropped the clipboard.
For the first time, she looked defeated.
Mark felt a mix of pity and triumph.
She had spent months trying to control him, his car, and the neighborhood, only to realize that real rules, did not bend to her will. After Karen was escorted inside by the investigators for questioning, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Mark walked to his Charger, touching the hood gently.
He smiled.
"We made it," he whispered. Tom came over, clapping him on the shoulder.
"I knew you'd win, Mark. But wow, that was insane." Mark laughed, a little shakily.
"I just wanted to park my car in peace."
Tom smiled. "And now you can. Without any HOA nightmares."
By the end of the week, the HOA management officially removed Karen from her position. The investigation continued, but Mark knew the worst was over. The neighborhood slowly returned to quiet mornings, cheerful greetings, and peaceful afternoons. Children played in the yards again.
Dogs barked happily.
Even the neighbors who had once feared speaking up began to smile at Mark. Mark looked at his Charger one last time and felt proud. Not just because it was safe, but because he had stood his ground against someone who had tried to take everything from him. That evening, as the sun set, Mark sat on his porch, watching the sky turn orange and pink. He thought about Karen and the chaos she had caused.
Sometimes, people get so obsessed with control that they forget what really matters: respect, fairness, and the law. Karen had learned that lesson the hard way.
Mark leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and smiled. The Charger gleamed in the sunset, untouched, untouchable, and completely his. And for the first time since moving in, Mark felt at home. Because sometimes, the person who screams the loudest about rules is the one breaking them the most. And sometimes, justice, slow, firm, and unwavering, arrives exactly when it should.